In a world where loyalty and faith were as strong as the walls of the grand castles that dotted the English countryside, the year 1534 was a turning point. Imagine a king, once beloved, now standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. This king, Henry VIII, was determined to break away from the powerful Catholic Church, a move that would shake the very foundations of England and change the course of history forever. The story of how this happened, and the tragic fate of Sir Thomas More, a man who refused to betray his conscience, is a tale of loyalty, faith, and the harsh realities of power. Henry VIII, the second Tudor King of England, had a problem. He was married to Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess, and they had been together for nearly 20 years. But Catherine had only given him a daughter, Mary, and no son to carry on his lineage. Henry believed that a son was essential to secure his kingdom and prevent civil war after his death. He wanted to divorce Catherine and marry Anne Boleyn, a young and charming lady-in-waiting who promised him the son he desperately craved. However, the Catholic Church, led by the Pope in Rome, did not allow divorce. Henry's request to annul his marriage to Catherine was met with silence and resistance. This was partly because Catherine's nephew, Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, had significant influence over the Pope. The Pope, Clement VII, was caught in a difficult position. On one hand, he did not want to offend Charles V, and on the other, he had to maintain the Church's stance on marriage. Henry's frustration grew. He decided to take matters into his own hands. He assembled a special session of Parliament and pushed through a series of laws that would strip the Church of its power in England. This was a significant blow to the Vatican's finances and a clear act of defiance against the Pope. These actions were a direct challenge to the authority of the Catholic Church and deeply wounded the Pope. Pope Clement VII, who had been dawdling over Henry's divorce petition, finally issued a papal bull excommunicating Henry. This meant that Henry and his followers were cut off from the Church and condemned to eternal damnation. For a deeply religious society, this was a terrifying prospect. Henry's response was swift and severe. The final and most significant act was the Act of Supremacy, passed in November 1534. This act declared Henry VIII the supreme head of the Church of England, effectively breaking away from the Catholic Church and establishing the Ecclesia Anglicana, or the Church of England. This was a revolutionary move that would have far-reaching consequences for England and the rest of Europe. One of the most tragic figures in this drama was Sir Thomas More, a highly respected statesman and lawyer who had served as Henry's High Chancellor. More was a devout Catholic and a loyal servant of the king, but he found himself caught between his duty to the crown and his faith in the Church. When Henry demanded that his subjects take an oath to obey the Act of Succession, which recognized Anne Boleyn as the queen and her children as legitimate heirs to the throne, More was torn. Taking the oath would mean repudiating the authority of the Pope and the Catholic Church, something More could not do in good conscience. More's refusal to take the oath was seen as a direct challenge to the king's authority. Despite his previous loyalty and service, More was charged with treason and imprisoned in the Tower of London. At his trial, More spoke out, declaring that the split from the Church was a tragic crime and that he could not, in all conscience, be an accomplice to it. He also stated that he could not believe that any temporal man could be the head of the Church. Despite his eloquence, the verdict was a foregone conclusion. More was condemned to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, the most brutal form of execution reserved for traitors. However, Henry, who had once valued More's friendship and counsel, showed a rare moment of mercy. He changed the sentence to simple beheading. On July 6, 1535, Sir Thomas More mounted the scaffold with dignity and grace. As he prepared to die, he said, "I pray you, Mr. Lieutenant, see me safe up, and for my coming down let me shift for myself." He then asked the crowd to witness his death, in the faith and for the faith of the Catholic Church, being the king's good servant, but God's first. More's execution sent shockwaves through England. No one believed that a man of his integrity and loyalty could be capable of betraying the crown. His death was a tragedy, and many saw it as a dark sign of the times. Less than a year later, Anne Boleyn herself faced a similar fate. Her reign as queen had been short-lived and disastrous. She had failed to produce a male heir, and her personality had changed dramatically. Once known for her charm and wit, she became moody, imperious, and demanding. Henry, who had once been captivated by her, grew tired of her and began to look elsewhere. He became infatuated with Jane Seymour, another lady-in-waiting, and decided to rid himself of Anne. Anne was accused of adultery and treason. She was tried and found guilty, despite the lack of credible evidence. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn was beheaded on the orders of the king. Her execution was seen as a divine punishment for the rebellion against the church, and many believed that only God could have brought such misfortune upon the king and his new queen. The break from the Catholic Church and the establishment of the Church of England had profound and lasting effects. It marked the beginning of the English Reformation, a period of religious and political upheaval that would shape the future of England and the wider world. The Church of England, with the king as its supreme head, became a powerful institution in its own right, and the English monarchy gained even more control over religious and secular matters. The story of Henry VIII, Sir Thomas More, and Anne Boleyn is a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power and the importance of conscience. It shows how even the most loyal subjects can be betrayed when a ruler's desires clash with their principles. It also highlights the strength of faith and the willingness of individuals to stand up for what they believe, even in the face of certain death. In the end, the events of 1534 and the years that followed changed the course of English history. They set the stage for a new era of religious and political freedom, but they also came at a great cost. The lives of Sir Thomas More and Anne Boleyn, among others, serve as a reminder of the human toll of such dramatic changes. Their stories continue to resonate today, inspiring us to think deeply about the balance between loyalty, faith, and the pursuit of power.